Welcome to the chaos sector. We return to the matrix. I have a question. Does anyone have any official surveillance footage from the Idaho murders investigation? Again, has there been any official surveillance footage released in this case? The answer is no. Now, out of nowhere, we have another leak of surveillance. Let me just stop right here and explain to all who are plastering all of this leaked footage out here. None of it will show anything that proves Koberger is the killer, because it would have already been shown and shown officially by Moscow PD and the mainstream media. That's number one. Number two, everyone needs to question the individuals who are leaking it out, because once again, it is not law enforcement. Well, it is, but it isn't if you catch my drift. The drunk turkey show was the first one that we spotted that displayed this leaked footage. And from what we examined, it is surveillance footage from the gas station showing a white vehicle driving down White Avenue. But the problem here, as with all leaked footage, is who leaked it. We left a comment on that video to put things into perspective. The video is titled, quote, Boom, Leaked Footage, Brian Koberger, unquote. Not sure why they have Koberger's name in the title. It's not like you're proving that it's his vehicle. And then, if you did suggest that, you've been following the case from the beginning. Right, drunk turkey? How could? You know what, let's just focus on the comment. Quote, Who leaked this footage? Because the gas station clerk claimed they didn't know which direction the vehicle went. Yet, we all know that's a lie because you're displaying the front camera facing the intersection. Now, what the chaos finds suspicious is every time there is a leak of footage, we have the usual suspects flocking to examine it. Gray Hughes, Jeff H., and apparently you also. When you are examining this leaked footage, do your audience a favor and provide a source of who leaked it so they can follow the source trail. Because without that source trail, it starts to look like individuals covering this case have. Well, let's just say they have access to surveillance footage. It is 2025 and this same leak existed in 2022, yet wasn't leaked back then, unquote. Now let me touch on the source trail for a moment before we get into the overall take. This is leaked footage from a gas station, correct? Okay, now we all know the gas station, which is a private-owned company, is not running or handing out their surveillance to random Joes on social media. So far, so good? Good. Now, this brings up the most important question. Who walked into that gas station and obtained a copy of that surveillance, then posted it on social media? Let that question ponder for a moment. Matter of fact, take your time. Okay, hopefully you see where this is headed. First of all, let's address the quality of surveillance between this leaked footage and the initial footage that was released in mainstream media. The first problem we have is the horrible quality of the first image compared to this leaked imagery. Now we went over that and stated it was edited. Some believed it was just a photo taken from outside the window. Blah, blah. No need to make things difficult. Just take the damn photo from the monitor inside. Oh wait, that explains it. It wasn't Moscow PD who took that photo. Alright, here we go again with the fuckery. Who took that crappy photo then? Again, the tablet is physically inside the building, as we see the background and the fingers holding it. But the actual footage displayed is not from the tablet, nor is it a part of any physical element in the entire photo. Let's explain this one more time, because somehow people are getting stuck on this. What you are viewing is a tablet being held by someone inside a building, right? Okay, we can all see that. What many are claiming is this is a photo of a photo being taken, creating the multiplier effect. Incorrect. When there is a photo of a photo being taken, the image is within the physical frame of the device that is capturing the image. No matter how many times it multiplies, the physical properties never change, other than decreasing in size. In other words, there is no bleeding outside of the physical properties that the device capturing. Okay, this is pissing me off a bit. It's crappy edited footage. Can we all agree on that? Geez, here is an example of the multiplier effect. As you see, the individual is taking a photo of holding another phone, right? Everyone sees the effect that is being created? In photo editing, there is a term called bleeding. Anyone who has experience in photo editing is familiar with this term. Bleeding is an area outside of a printed image that is left empty, so that it can be trimmed off after printing. Now, we have editing experience, but we will use the term in a similar way to describe how the surveillance footage is outside of the physical property of the tablet. Hence bleeding outside of it. This is physically impossible, so it's not a photo of a photo. The other claim is that someone took the photo from the other side, through the window, And that's why it has that reflective visual effect of the surveillance. Again, despite what device was used, where it was used, how it was used, does not make the surveillance footage bleed outside of the physical device. In addition, if you claim it's a reflection, where is it being reflected from? Because we can clearly see that the individual is inside a building holding a tablet. So if you claim they're taking a photo through the window, are you claiming the surveillance footage is on a screen outside of the building, which we conclude is the gas station? If you claim someone is taking a photo of the footage through the window, which means they're taking a photo of the alleged surveillance screen on the tablet, you're incorrect there as well. Because once again, the footage is bleeding outside of the tablet's physical border, and the camera is shown, proving it's the back of the tablet anyway. It's just visual vomit that was dumped out there. It's not a reflection of anything. It's garbage that was thrown out there. Let's do a bit of editing ourselves. Here is what was displayed in the media. The crappy footage, right? Well, here's the original photo. We just took the surveillance out and did a quick edit of what it originally looked like. A person holding a tablet inside the gas station. There isn't any surveillance footage in the original photo taken, which makes that even suspicious in itself. Why? Because someone took a photo of someone holding a tablet. What's the point in that? It's a fucking tablet. Unless that tablet surface, being the back of it, was used to place an overlay of surveillance. What's the fucking point in that also? But despite their clickbait fuckery, Moscow PD actually visited the gas station, showed a photo from inside the office, displaying the monitor of the same time of 3:45 a.m. Yet they never, I repeat, they never released that screenshot of a white vehicle in surveillance as a potential suspect. You see this photo from inside the gas station? To the right side is the monitor, which is surveilling White Avenue. Now keep in mind, Moscow PD obtained this very surveillance footage, but never released anything from that gas station. But guess who somehow displays the very surveillance footage from that gas station? That's right, individuals such as Drunk Turkey, Gray Hughes, Jeff H., and others who are clearly snooping around.
Let's examine the other leaked screenshot from that gas station, being the camera that's facing the intersection. As you see, that camera covers the intersection of White Avenue and Troy Road. Yet the gas clerk claimed they didn't know which direction the vehicle went. She did know. And the reason she stated that is because that vehicle turned right onto Troy Road instead of straight ahead onto Steiner, which leads back to the neighborhood. This would be at 3:45 a.m. with a white vehicle leaving Moscow prior to when the murders occurred, based on law enforcement. Of course, many would say, but you're saying their investigation was flawed? They got this and that wrong, touche yet? You're forgetting the alleged Linda Lane surveillance that is being alluded to here, which is approximately 4:05 a.m. of the alleged killer's vehicle spotted. Now what I noticed is this is from another video examining the surveillance. More than likely Gray Hughes or Jeff H., doesn't matter which one. The header mentions something about Linda Lane, again, more leaked surveillance footage. What they're doing is trying to link this footage together, quite ironic, because Taylor is saying the prosecution has a bunch of scattered surveillance footage, piecing them together. Well, I think the correlation speaks for itself, don't you think? In other words, these are the individuals who are working for the prosecution to convict Kohberger. Yep, I said it, but let's follow their path. First, let's go back over the map. It's been a while. Here is the map of the neighborhood. Based on the claims, Kohberger entered the neighborhood from the back streets, not the main street of Taylor Avenue. Okay, the gas station surveillance is timed at 3:45 a.m. when the vehicle is spotted speeding down White Avenue. Kohberger would exit on Elantra Drive, then Ridge Road, Steiner, then apparently Indian Hills. They claim his vehicle was spotted here, Blaine Street, then White Avenue, then came back to the neighborhood. Keep that time in mind. Let's follow the path all the way to White Avenue. At 3:30 a.m. in the Linda Lane surveillance, there is a vehicle spotted circling Queen Road Apartments. Okay, let's say this is the white vehicle in the gas station surveillance, alluded to be Kohberger. All right, let's break it down. Then at 3:39, the vehicle circles again. At 3:56, the vehicle circles again. So far, this vehicle has circled the apartments 3 times, from 3:30 a.m. to 3:56 a.m. Keep in mind, everyone is reported to be home during this time frame, and Kaylee and Madison are trying to reach Jack, and those phone calls stopped around 3 a.m. Now, in between the time frame of 3:39 to 3:56, what they are suggesting is Koberger left the neighborhood, exiting on Elantra Drive, heads down Ridge Road, then Steiner, then Indian Hills, jolted all the way to Blaine Street near Taco Bell, made a left on White Avenue, sped down White Avenue, spotted at 3:45 a.m. by surveillance, and then based on their path, drove straight down Steiner and came to the neighborhood around 3:55 a.m. Here's the alleged path they're claiming Koberger took. Here's a question though, if Koberger leaves the neighborhood multiple times from approximately 3:30 a.m. to 3:56 a.m., what could warrant this anxiety? Because Moscow PD, being the unmarked cruiser, had left the neighborhood around 3:15 a.m. And this would mean Koberger was staking out somewhere keeping an eye on the cruiser. If we link the white vehicle spotted passing by on Taylor Avenue during the Banfield body cam footage, this was around 3 a.m., 2:58 a.m. to be precise. Again, during this time frame, Kaylee and Madison were calling Jack, which we all can come to the conclusion those were emergency phone calls. Heck, some would say their phones were used to make it appear they were alive, just like Xana, but nevertheless, let's track this time. The first sighting of the alleged vehicle in the Linda Lane surveillance was 3:30 a.m., circling the apartments. So that vehicle passing authorities at 2:58 a.m. did not enter the neighborhood, right? Perhaps continued down Taylor, which turns into Elantra? Okay, then we assume they just drove around in that area for a while before entering the neighborhood around 3:30 a.m. On a side note, there was a black truck spotted passing on Taylor as well, which was speculated to be Dylan's or her boyfriend's. This was at 3 a.m., soon after the phone calls from Kaylee and Madison stopped. Well, maybe there was too much activity going on in the neighborhood. You know, like frat guys running around, random party activity and such. And what about the traffic in that area? Which goes back to another point. Why would Koberger attempt to drive into a neighborhood, driving a light bulb at night, by the way, all alone with only a knife, knowing there's a full house of college students, with the possibility of even more people coming to that home? We went over this, of course. Upon arriving in the neighborhood, observing the home, Koberger would see multiple vehicles in the driveway, along with all the other vehicles jammed up in the neighborhood. The only way he would assume he could get away with the murders is he would have to have insider assistance and also ears and eyes in the neighborhood as well. Was Koberger the hitman for the drug cartel, or was he investigating criminal activity between WSU and UI that went left and he hauled ass out of town? We presented both theories in our investigation, so don't think we haven't covered all the bases. That's for those who think we're somehow a part of some pro-Koberger fan club. This is serious. In this alleged path, where is the footage showing him entering and leaving and entering and leaving and entering, then leaving the neighborhood? If you're leaking all of this surveillance footage, why hasn't anyone got their hands on the neighbor's security camera? I mean, after all, everything else has been leaked out there, including a snapshot from that very security camera. And we spotted another piece of surveillance, apparently from Indian Hills. So if this is Koberger's vehicle driving around, yet no surveillance from Ground Zero has been leaked out, how do we know it's his vehicle? Where is the footage? Isn't it the neighbor's security camera footage that places Koberger in the neighborhood? Aren't you all eager to reveal this to the public? Linda Lane's surveillance was leaked. Whoever leaked it wanted to suggest Koberger's white Hyundai Elantra was spotted. Okay, they convinced people of that. Then we had this leaked surveillance from the gas station showing a white vehicle, which could be a white Hyundai Elantra. Okay, some may be convinced of that. But without the neighbor's surveillance footage, you aren't placing Koberger in the neighborhood. Yet everything else is being leaked out there, right? What could be the reason for this hesitance to obtain that footage? Exculpatory evidence, that's what. And it destroys all of this leaking of footage, trying to force Koberger in the neighborhood indirectly. Someone posted a question on Drunk Turkey's video. Why are there 3 images of the vehicle in the surveillance? Didn't seem like a big deal at face value, but when you zoom in on that surveillance footage, which is authentic, we obviously know that 2 of those images were placed into the surveillance. There is no reason to edit in images of the same vehicle that has been captured by the same surveillance camera, you understand. In other words, whoever obtained that surveillance could have just played the footage back and took snapshots frame by frame for the best visibility. No need to take an image of the moving vehicle in the surveillance, cut it out of that surveillance, and then place it back in the surveillance to show the moving vehicle. Might not seem to be a big deal, but it suggests there is a lot of editing of surveillance by individuals who have obtained, quote, access to this surveillance. Now, the white vehicle being spotted. Well, there's another Hyundai Elantra at play here, which has been quickly pushed in the background. The Eugene, Oregon white Hyundai Elantra. Yep, that vehicle is key. That vehicle was in fact a 2011 to 2013 white Hyundai Elantra, yet Moscow PD quickly came out and ruled it out as being a suspect. Interesting enough about that Elantra is Moscow PD stated they did not believe the individual had any relation to any property in Moscow or the ongoing murder investigation. Any relation to any property in Moscow? Did they have this same claim about Koberger's 2015 Hyundai Elantra on November 29th? Nope. They visited his apartments, obtained surveillance footage from those apartments, and began their so-called investigation upon him. Just because the alleged owner of the crashed and abandoned Elantra was a female, does this mean they weren't capable of murder or a person of interest? It's a white Hyundai Elantra. It's the same 2011 to 2013 model the so-called FBI expert identified in surveillance somewhere. Yet it was ruled out around December 20th. Another example of law enforcement turning their heads to the opposite direction in the investigation. Quote, Moscow police released new information at 7:30 p.m. Tuesday about the white Hyundai Elantra found in Eugene, Oregon. Police said the vehicle is registered out of Colorado, and investigators spoke with the female owner. Police said she is not believed to have any relation to any property in Moscow, Idaho, or the ongoing murder investigation. Now you see, they didn't speak to Brian Koberger and give him the opportunity to be cleared. Think about this. You have a crashed and abandoned 2011 to 2013 white Hyundai Elantra found in Eugene, Oregon. Law enforcement contacts the owner of the vehicle and gives her the opportunity to be questioned about any potential connection to the murders. And get this, they never identified the female. They even asked the public to stop contacting her. Why so protective, hey? Don't want her to become publicly exposed as being connected to the murders? Even in Eugene, Oregon, far from their jurisdiction, Moscow PD executed damage control at a distance. Wow. Koberger, on the other hand, vehicle was spotted November 29th in Pullman. He was identified. Moscow PD visited his apartments and collected surveillance footage. He was tracked, pulled over to inspect his vehicle and body, tracked all the way to Pennsylvania. The FBI snoops through his parents' trash, collected DNA samples, and soon after he was arrested. And then they decide to collect a DNA sample from him after he was arrested? What the? Anywho, let's continue. Moscow PD asked the public to stop contacting the owner. Anyone with information about the murders or the white Hyundai Elantra is asked to call the tip line. Tips may also be submitted on the website. Moscow police are aware of an abandoned white Hyundai Elantra found with no license plates and front end damage after it was reported to be found on a street corner in Eugene, Oregon. Unquote. Now do you see this nonsense? Wasn't it reported that the vehicle didn't have any plates? Wasn't it reported that it was a 2011 to 2013 model? Someone called the tip line about this vehicle because it matches the description that Moscow PD released. Yet, it can't be the vehicle. It's all the way in Eugene, Oregon. And the owner is a female with the vehicle registered out of Colorado. Oh, okay, she's not capable of being involved in the murders. Look how quick Moscow PD came out and ruled this vehicle out. Do you remember how fast that was? As soon as it was speculated it may be linked to the murders, Moscow PD came out and ruled it out. Yet how can you rule the vehicle out that fast when you haven't investigated properly? Also, why did they mention the female not having any relation to any property in Moscow, Idaho? Does Koberger have any relation to any property in Moscow, Idaho? The point here is, what does that indicate in relation to the murders? Are they suggesting that they're suspecting the murders are associated with someone who does have relation to property in Moscow, Idaho? Well, that's what we gather from it. And some have dug deeper and speculated, or from their view have proven that this female does have a relation to property in Moscow, Idaho, being the victim's home, and there's more of cover-up being exposed. As we pointed out, this was carefully planned to frame Koberger with the same vehicle.
And let me echo that point about the vehicle being linked to the victim's home. Now, let's go back to the map for a moment. I think there's something to ponder here. From Moscow, Idaho to Eugene, Oregon is about an 8-hour drive. Okay, what is significant about this time? I think it's already starting to come to you. 8 hours, the time frame that it is alleged the housemates waited before calling 911. Yep, there you go. waited to call 911 after the Elantra was far away from the crime scene. Once it was far away in another state, it was, quote, cleared from any involvement in the murders. But mind you, the inner circle of peers were notified about the murders before sunrise. Yes, nobody went to sleep after seeing a man clad in all black, all fabricated. Everyone in that neighborhood knew those housemates were murdered. Does anyone question that? Think about it. If there are murders in a neighborhood, which are quite brutal as well, that information will spread rapidly within that community. The point, residents know about a murder before the authorities do. 8 hours had passed before the authorities were called, not because the housemates had fallen asleep. It was to make sure that white Hyundai Elantra had cleared out and dumped off hundreds of miles away from the crime scene. It had to be dumped off far away, because if it were in that Pullman-Moscow area, well, maybe Moscow PD would have done their job and investigated the owner of the vehicle, since it matched the description of their perp. Calls go out. Bonnie and Clyde, in our opinion, were there prior, left, then came back, with the bogus DoorDash delivery around 4 a.m., making sure the neighborhood is quiet, and Dylan will keep her mouth shut. Once everything was accomplished, the white Hyundai Elantra heads to Eugene, Oregon. Again, the owner of the vehicle was identified as a female associated with the landlord. But we don't know if she was driving the vehicle, you see? It could have been Bonnie and Clyde in that vehicle, after they so-called dropped off the crack. Dropped off the crack to make it appear Xana was alive, and also to make sure everything in the home and neighborhood stayed calm, then headed for Eugene to dump off the dummy vehicle. It's a dummy vehicle because it was used to frame someone they were keeping an eye on, who has the same make, model, and color. Clyde is slick, but I think Bonnie is the one who may have gotten close enough to Koberger to set up the frame. These are logical possibilities due to knowing, well, Xana didn't order any damn jack in the crack. So from that, the DoorDash delivery is linked to the murders, and everything just starts to fall in place off that fact. This is how criminal organizations operate, my friends. But the female that allegedly owned the vehicle, which was registered in Colorado, doesn't exempt her from being in Moscow that night. And it's like they want to prove this by mentioning what state the vehicle was registered in. Who the hell cares? It matches the description of your perp. In addition, it was never reported that Moscow PD even searched the vehicle, performing forensics, confirming that the vehicle was actually cleared from any involvement. No forensics done on the vehicle, which was found crashed and abandoned. The same color, make, model, and year of the vehicle you're looking for. What type of boneheaded investigating are they doing here? The kind that protects suspects, that kind. Now, as for the connection to that home, it is speculated that the female was associated with the landlord of that property, and although we didn't dig deep into it in our investigation, we can conclude that this is likely true. Why? Because Moscow PD made it a point to state the owner of that vehicle had no relation to any property in Moscow, Idaho. That's out of left field. It has no relevance to if the owner is possibly involved in the crime, unless you're alluding to that very relevance, you see? Basically, they were bombarded with theories about that vehicle, where some speculated she was linked to that property, and that's why Moscow PD came out attempting damage control on that very information. I'm done.
That's what the fuckery does. Why even do it? But that's the moral conflict we have. It's so absurd. You find yourself almost incapable of dealing with it. But on the flip side, the absurdity needs to be exposed. No forensics done on a white 2011 to 2013 Hyundai Elantra, found crashed and abandoned in another state. Cleared the owner of the vehicle without even thinking it's possible she was linked to the murders, in their public reports, of course. How do you clear someone who has the exact color, make, model, and year of the potential suspect you're looking for? Something like this, I guess. Where you in Moscow, the night 4 college students were murdered? No, sir. I live in Colorado and I'm doing work in Oregon at the moment. Oh, okay. Sorry to bother, ma'am. Have a good day, and hopefully you can get your vehicle repaired. I know a guy as well. Here, take my card. What the fuck? No license plates. Discovered crashed and abandoned in another state without any real investigating. Heck, even the red Mustang had forensics done, which was found crashed and abandoned in Moscow, doused with bleach. Yet nothing came about from that apparently. The vehicle that Drunk Turkey, Gray Hughes, and Jeff H. are foaming at the mouth over in that leaked surveillance is this very vehicle. And they know it, but won't admit it due to carrying out the frame job on social media. Let's reiterate. The vehicle was spotted at 3:45 a.m. on White Avenue, right? Well, the path it took to travel to that area coincidentally passes Bonnie's home on Ridge Road. Now, let's make sure everyone understands the point. When we stated the vehicle turned right on Troy Road, this was based on the news claim, who stated it appeared to be heading out of town. Of course, the mainstream media can't be trusted, yet we can only utilize information presented to determine if it pans out. But at that point, it didn't head out of town. Let's revise it. It headed straight down Steiner, heading back to the neighborhood. And the reason it was speeding is because Bonnie and Clyde were rushing back to the neighborhood to make sure there weren't any snitches. Why? Because at the very time frame, the unmarked cruiser had gotten another call downtown, soon after their time on Taylor Avenue. They basically gave the guys a warning for stealing a sign, which was a diversion to pull them away from the neighborhood. Then we see the vehicle speeding down White Avenue on the gas station surveillance, heading back to the scene of the crime. I believe they were there for about 20 minutes or so. Truth and Transparency claimed they ended the body cam footage of that sign-stealing diversion, which was around 3:37 a.m. At 3:30 through 3:39 a.m., a vehicle is circling Queen Road Apartments. And of course, there was a white vehicle being spotted at 3:45 a.m. near the gas station, heading back. We can suggest that Bonnie and Clyde used her home as a safe house if things got a little hot, such as law enforcement driving around. Also, as the so-called headquarters of their drug trafficking ring in town, with, well, the victim's home being a trap house in the neighborhood. You see, Bonnie and Clyde were basically right around the corner on Ridge Road, about 5 minutes from the victim's home. And because Dylan was their mole, she notified them when to come back. We just take the same concept of everyone claiming Koberger was driving around Moscow before attacking, and apply it to Bonnie and Clyde and that white Hyundai Elantra. The same way the mainstream media suggests that Koberger was in and out of the neighborhood, Bonnie and Clyde would be doing the same. Sure, there were officers on the payroll, and this may be why they were often visiting that home. It wasn't just for noise complaints. They were keeping an eye on how the household was being, quote, maintained, if you catch my drift. Get a Clue claimed a Ford Fusion was spotted in the Linda Lane surveillance at 4:07 a.m., coming around Queen Road Apartments. Now, since all of those feet on the ground investigators who visited that neighborhood never identified a Ford Fusion, a silver one at that, this would be the same unmarked cruiser. So we have them leaving the neighborhood around 3:15 a.m., pulled away, then Bonnie and Clyde are in and out, overseeing the crime, leaving the area completely once the murders had occurred. Heads back to the neighborhood to make sure everything was cool. Then at 4:07 a.m., the unmarked cruiser comes back, and during this time frame, there is complete silence in the neighborhood. From 4 a.m. to 11:58 a.m., approximately 8 hours, Bonnie and Clyde take a trip, stopping off in Pullman as well. Calls Dylan and lets her know they're in Eugene, Oregon with the dummy. Now, some may see this as wild and crazy speculations, as Get a Clue would say. But this entire case is wild and crazy, that's for one. But the reason the chaos presents these theories is because of what we've broken down over 2 years in our investigation. Too many holes, too many inconsistencies, oddities, flat-out lies, mainstream media lies, unlawful actions by law enforcement, unlawful investigations, disregarding a crash and abandoned vehicle that matches the description of a potential suspect. All of this creates theories that we form in attempts to plug in all of those holes. In addition, that female was not identified. Moscow PD tells the public to not contact her and claims she doesn't have any relation to any property in Moscow, which basically revealed she is linked to Moscow, to be honest. They never identified the DoorDash driver, and they concealed Dylan's whereabouts prior to the murders. Now, if you agree this is not how law enforcement handles a murder case, then our theories are logical. Drunk Turkey seemed a bit indifferent early on. At least that's what the chaos perceived. Gray Hughes works for the government, and we're starting to think Jeff H. does as well. If Drunk Turkey just so happens to watch this, or it gets back to him, please share with everyone how that surveillance was leaked out. Because it appears Gray Hughes was the first to leak it out, which we know he definitely won't come close to the chaos. We checked his channel to see if he had a post, a video, or a stream examining those screenshots from the gas station, and it seems it doesn't exist. So where did Drunk Turkey and Jeff H. download it from? Well, the images have spread throughout cyberspace, such as Reddit. Who leaked it out? That is the question. Linda Lane was leaked out by someone who allegedly went to the landlord and, quote, scammed them out of the surveillance. Gray Hughes visited those apartments and was confronted by that very landlord. But looking back at that, I believe it was staged to cover up the fact that he cunningly negotiated with the landlord to obtain that surveillance. Yeah, everyone would see it as Gray Hughes getting what he deserves, snooping around on that property for views. And you see, this aligns with the theory that Hughes is a government agent, because he would have the credentials to convince that landlord to fork over the surveillance. The so-called confrontation was nothing more than theater. JLR impersonates a journalist. He's been charged with impersonation in the past, changing his identity, using fake press passes and such, filing frivolous lawsuits. These individuals are not to be trusted in the true crime community. And this isn't slander, it's based on their own reputations. Gray Hughes appears to be involved with the FBI, posing as a true crime investigator on social media. He has a background in photo editing and video animation. Jeff H. also has a background in video editing. These are the leakers, in my opinion, pretending to obtain the leaked footage to their audience, who don't ask the important question: who leaked it out? Hold them accountable, require them to provide a source trail of that leak. Because at this point, everything that's being leaked is being leaked through the FBI via these true crime impersonator who are working for them in secret. For all those who are convinced that the gas station leak is supporting evidence for the prosecution, we leave you with these questions. Number one, this is not new footage. This same footage existed during the investigation. So why wasn't it officially released instead of that crappy imagery? And also, why wasn't this current footage officially released as well? These are considered third-party sources that are leaking footage in a murder investigation. That tells you law enforcement is hiding something about their alleged evidence. If not, they would have released it. Number two, don't you find it strange that this footage has been released when Taylor is starting to expose everything in the hearings? Someone is leaking to execute damage control for what's going on in the courtroom. And finally, which will always be the main point here, you can show tons of surveillance footage of what appears to be a white Hyundai Elantra driving around in Moscow. But until you show that vehicle entering and leaving the neighborhood during the time frame of the murders, it's just shit being thrown on the wall, you know the saying. This is the chaos sector.